Chapter 17.
Jumping grasshoppers, ejected Bill. If it ain't the dude. Say, mister, aren't you straying off the harm pasture? Oh, I get around, replied Plumford airily. And who?
He inclined his head to the direction of Mummy, a blotched shadow in the starlight.
Who is that gentleman?
She ain't no gentleman, grinned the squat rider. That's Mummy Rakestraw.
Oh, tut, tut, you sly dog.
The Englishman clucked reprovingly.
Feminine company again. Rather a hazardous spot for romancing, wouldn't I say?
Hey, don't get me wrong, injected Bill. Just met up with Mommy by happenstance. This certainly ain't no place for females, no sirree. Mummy's husky tones drifted through the dusk.
Nick on that female stuff, Bill. I can outride and outshoot most any hombre in the valley. I'm no dumb schoolmarm.
Oh, button up, growled the rider, his rackles raising at the reference of Phyllis Ford. He addressed Plumford again. You sticking around?
Oh, nothing would please me better, drawled the Englishman. I have a feeling that portentous events are shaping in this particular corner of hell, but where to seek concealment?
Recollection of the Eyrie on Needle Rock flashed into Bill's mind. From there, a lookout could keep cases on the Gap with ease, and he too was anxious to fathom the mystery of the trapped riders. You got a spyglass? He asked abruptly.
I carry an excellent pair of glasses, my dear boy.
Let's head for Needle Rock. We can keep cases on the coyotes from there.
But them there precipitous cliffs is unscalable, objected Plumford, and we have no wings, yet.
That's what you think, grunted Bill. I can mosey up. Let's skedaddle.
What about the lady? I'm going right along, put in Mummy decisively. The barrens are no place for a weak, lonely female to be riding alone.
Bill muttered something about some gals being worse than saddle burrs, neck reined his pony, and without further ado, headed for the Needle. Few words were exchanged during the ride towards the pinnacle. Questions jostled in Bill's mind. Where did the mysterious band of riders caught in the death trap hail from? What did Mommy know about Mirage Mine? Was she in cahoots with the bandits, or just some innocent maverick roped in by her brother's tie-up with the gang? Why had she risked her life to save his? And then there was this dang dude. How come he was around, and how much did he know? Finally, the squat rider quit trying to reason things out. Untying the knots was the sheriff's job, he decided. When he'd pried Phyllis Ford out of the bandit lair, he'd throw his hand in and go back to cow-punching. Life would be a whole lot simpler. They reached the gloomy pile and rounded its base. On the western side, screened from possible observation on the wall by the bulk of the towering rock, the three climbed out of leather. Bill unsaddled and hobbled the ponies. Mummy groped around for dead sticks. The Englishman, right hand strapped to his chest, sat on a rock and awkwardly stuffed the bowl of his briar with one hand. Bill emptied half the contents of a canteen into the crown of a Stenson and moistened the animal's nose. The remainder he spilled into a blackened coffee pot. The girl started a tiny fire between two rocks and set the coffee pot to boiling. Curiously, as the two men idly watched Mummy feed sticks to the fire, no mention of the subject that bulked foremost in their thoughts. The Mirage Mine was made. Each sipped unsweetened black coffee from Bill's tin mug. The fire died. Mummy tugged off her boots and shook off the slicker that was rolled behind the cantle of her saddle. The first grey glimmer of dawn found them astir. Plumford, hair rustled, sat up on his blanket, shivering at the chill bite of dawn, and eyed the steep walls that sloped above their heads.
"I still maintain that we need some wings," he observed with a questioning glance at Bill.
Mommy combed her long tresses and pinned them around her forehead. Bill, yanking on his boots, frowning at a disturbing thought. The dude could not climb the chimney with one arm. That meant he must remain below with the ponies. Once before, the squat rider had lagged it from Needle Rock to Coyote Springs, and he would never forget the torture of those unending hours. The dude had been around the night before, when those ponies were run off. True, he had sworn he was miles away when the critters vamoosed, but doubt still hung heavy on Bill's mind. Well, he decided philosophically, it was too late to pull back now. Plumford fished sleepily in a saddlebag and pulled out a leather case with a sling. Bill held out his hand. The dude stared questioningly. You can't make it, explained the rider. Not with that bum arm. We gotta climb like cats. The Englishman shrugged and relinquished the glasses. Bill loped them around one shoulder, the canteen over another, and then he led the way through heaped rubble, searching for the chimney. A solution to the problem of guarding the ponies entered his mind. Leave Mummy behind with the dude. He stopped at the foot of the chimney and stared upwards towards where it apparently merged with the smooth wall. The ledge that led to the break in the sundered rock was invisible from below. To an eye, the cliff was unscalable. After a careful inspection, he turned to Mommy. "Reckon I better go on alone," he announced. "That's no climb for a girl. Besides, it's worse as you get up higher. You keep that dude company." Mommy's dark eyes challenged him.
"I've got as much right to break my neck as you've got, Bill Williams. You get going and I'll be right at your heels."
The squat rider shrugged hopelessly. The perversity of women. With fingers and toes he worked up the chimney, Mommy close behind. They gained the ledge. Bill glanced down. The dude gazed upward, waved his good arm. The rider shuffled sideways along the narrow ledge, spilling shale, and disappeared behind the riven rock. Out of sight of the man below, he stopped in the shadow and swung back towards the girl. "Listen, I guess the dude's on the square, but if he ain't and runs our horses off, we're out of luck. You got a gun. You mosey back and let on like you're scared to go on ahead and keep an eye on our horses." The girl's eyes opened wide in surprise. Bill steeled himself for an argument, but to his relief, she shrugged her shoulders and commenced edging backwards. A load of forbearing off his mind, he moved ahead. There'd be no shenanigans with Mommy around. He emerged at the bottom of the well, climbed the spikes, and crawled out into bright white sunlight. He bent his gaze upon the long, dark rampart of the wall, still wrapped in shadow. Carefully, he adjusted the glasses and focused upon the gap. The light was not yet strong enough to reveal detail. He slipped the lens back into the leather case and hunkered on an uneasy platform and built himself a smoke. Slowly, sunlight flooded the paling below until it lay like a vast sheet of wrinkled parchment, every detail crystal clear. The gap now showed plain. Leveling the glasses again, Bill picked out the fragments of rock strewn around the entrance, even identified the pile of ashes that remained from the fiery briar of the previous night. For an hour he kept vigil, but the barrens were apparently devoid of life, save of buzzards winging heavily above the waist. A sudden exclamation escaped him. He glimpsed movement at the gap. The glasses revealed a rider threading through the rocks. Gaining the open plain, the stranger swung southward and, ant-like in the distance, crawled up and down the swales. Bill descended the well and dropped from spike to spike. Plumford and the girl were relaxing in the shade, the ponies grouped close by, when he scrambled down the chimney. "There's a Jasper heading south," he shouted. "We gotta get him." Mommy was in the saddle before he reached his buckskin. The Englishman fumbled awkwardly at the latigo as he cinched his saddle. Bill pulled away from the needle at a canter, angling across the plain to cut off the lone rider. Mommy swayed easily in the saddle beside him. For a while they held to a hollow below two swales. Plumford was somewhere behind. Bill kneed the pony and breasted the slope to the right. He topped the ridge, and the plain flowed into view. Clearly outlined, their quarry jogged leisurely across the swale. "Say," grunted Bill, "you rein up and stick around for the dude. There's gonna be gunplay." Mommy's lips twisted in a mocking smile.
"Oh, don't give me that line. You wouldn't shoot for $1,000,000.
"Hold it," he barked, spurring the buckskin into a gallop.
"That's a woman, your dull-faced schoolmarm on Tim O'Leary's mare for a bet,"
she snapped, sticking close to his stirrup. "You're crazy." Bill jerked his pony to a halt and fumbled for Plumford's glasses, still swinging from his shoulder. Eyes glued to the lens, he followed the rider's progress. "By God," he breathed, "you hit the target. How in the hell did you figure that?"
"Why not ride ahead and ask her?"
suggested Mommy coldly. Plumford pounded along the swales and pulled up his blowing mount beside them.
"Complications?"
he inquired. "I reckon that's Miss Ford out there," said Bill.
"Extraordinary."
Bill again lunged forward, wildly waving his Stetson. The rider reined up and sat still in the saddle, watching the trio as they streaked towards her. Bill's features creased in a huge smile as he pulled up beside Phyllis Ford. "Well, ain't this a loppaloozer?" he exclaimed delightedly. "You all right, ma'am?"
"I've never felt better," smiled the girl. "Well,"
as the dude raced up,
"Mr. Plumford and Miss Rakestraw, I believe. It's wonderful to be among friends again. I wondered if I'd ever find my way to the spring."
Mommy nodded curtly and pulled back. The two men crowded close.
"Miss Ford," drawled the Englishman, "we are exploding with curiosity. Why were you abducted? Have you been to the mine? Why this sudden emergence from the depths of mystery?"
Phyllis smiled.
"Well, I've been living in a hut close to the mine. It was in a narrow canyon, but that's all really I know. I was blindfolded and almost dead with fatigue when they took me in, and they brought me out last night in the dark. All I know is that it is north of the gap."
"But the map clearly indicates south,"
interposed Plumford. Phyllis sighed.
"I'm afraid the map is useless."
"Well, how come the coyotes grabbed you?" demanded Bill.
"They wanted me to sign a document relinquishing my rights to the mine. When I refused, Cheyenne, their leader, and a most delightful character, said he had been ordered to hold me prisoner until I did so. He was pleasant company, told the dolorous stories around the campfire. And then he rebelled against the chief, whoever that may be, and grabbed the mine for himself. He was quite frank about it, promised I'd be well looked after. The chief sent a body of men to crush him, but there was an awful fight yesterday evening. Cheyenne rode back to the mine and said he was boss now and I could ride out."
Phyllis spread her hands.
"That's all."
"Well, that's certainly interesting," drawled the Englishman. "Chivalry bandits defies the chief. Oh, the sheriff certainly will be fascinated. I must say the experience has not detracted from your appearance.
Rather the reverse. Shall we ride?
Phyllis kneed her pony and Plumford pulled up beside her. Bill dropped behind.
The dude's trumped your ace, murmured Mummy wickedly, easing over.
The stocky rider eyed the pair ahead, engaging in animate conversation. His wide mouth quirked ruefully, but he was silent.
The schoolmarm's eyes never even left that tailor's dummy,
continued the girl relentlessly.
I gamble she never even saw you. They fit. They're both dudes. And you're just a cow nurse. You better snap out of it, lunkhead.
Bill swung her towards his tormentor, smoky eyes ablazing. Put a dally on your tongue, he gritted. Mummy smiled and tossed her head. 2 deputies from Danville held down the Bar W bunkhouse when the 4 rode in. The lawmen, hefting Winchesters, eyed the newcomers narrowly.
Sheriff Stevens, replied one in answer to Plumford's haughty inquiry. I reckon he's hanging out in Danville, getting organized for trouble, and you can't stick around here. There's sheriff's orders. But I own the ranch,
hollered the Englishman. The deputy, a cold-eyed hombre, shifted his jaw.
Well, you go brace Pat Stevens, he advised.
I reckon that's an excellent idea, broke in Phyllis hastily with a glance at Plumford's tight lips. I really would like to see Mr. Stevens.
Well, as you wish, agreed the Englishman stiffly, but these fellows have damnable nerves, a characteristic of this uncultured country.
Bill had been sitting his pony in silence. He guessed Pat had planted the deputies to guard the oar. At Plumford's caustic comment, his lips parted in angry disgust. Right then, Mummy's pony developed a fit of jitters, pitching violently and colliding with the buckskin. Bill wheeled clear, and by the time Mummy had regained control of the piebald, the Englishman and Phyllis were jogging away between the pines. Town Marshal Moreland's stuffy shack was packed with an eager-ear group as Phyllis told her story. The marshal, hunched in his chair, frowned in perplexity. Pat and the red-headed Ezra listened attentively. The other members of the party filled straight-back chairs. You spoke of a battle, ma'am, questioned the sheriff when she concluded. Would that be a ruckus at the mine? Mommy's husky voice broke in.
Let Bill spill it. He was there. Almost,
she added dryly. All eyes shifted to the rider's freckled features. He told of riding towards the gap with Mommy. How come Miss Rakestraw took a hand? Injected Pat. The girl smiled roguishly.
Bill and me were old partners.
Bill growled and continued his story. Spoke of seeing the mysterious bunch of riders who disappeared into the canyon, the blazing pile that blocked the gap, and the springing of the trap. Well, I guess that wild bunch is done finished, commented Pat at the end of his recital. Moreland had been pawing through his collections of reward notices, and he handed one to the sheriff. Did you recognize this, Jasper? Asked Pat, passing the sheet to Phyllis Ford. It was headed wanted and bore a rough reproduction of a square-headed man with thinning hair. Even the crude reproduction could not hide the humorous twist in his lips and the devil-may-care expression around his deep-set eyes.
A Cheyenne, she exclaimed. Why, that's the leader at the mine.
Curiously, she read aloud.
Cheyenne, Alice William Parker, wanted for murder. Escaped from Tucson Penitentiary, killing 2 guards. Convicting of bank robbery and payroll holdups. This man is a dangerous gunman. Shoot on sight. Why, she exclaimed, it's unbelievable. He was a charming companion and acted like a perfect gentleman.
Well, you never can tell, commented Pat dryly. He turned to the Englishman. How come you were around the gap?
I was just poking around, one might say, returned Plumford vaguely.
The sheriff eyed him thoughtfully. 'Pears you're always poking around. First you poke into Pete's body, then Bill claimed you poked into his horses, and you poke into the W bar the day after the oars cashed. Then you poke into the gap when Cheyenne goes hog wild. Mister, I reckon I gotta poke you into the slammer. You're under arrest, suspicion of complacency in the murder of Pete Ford. Jim, stick him in a cell. End of chapter 17.